There's a long-standing perception, and some of it's earned, that the Steelers are good at drafting. And it might be one of those things, if you say it often enough, people believe it. They've had that reputation. Everything has to come from the inside. Everything has to, move up the ladder. We prefer to have our own guys, our own types of guys who are true Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, great. Problem is, it isn't accurate, and it hasn't been accurate for a while. If you look at the Steelers' recent history in the draft, and by that, I don't mean, going through all 7 rounds here. I'm typing it up on the screen here. If you're going through just the higher picks, you're going to find that this team has not done particularly well, including, notably, with its top picks. I'm going to go through. This is going to disturb you. I warn you, by the way. This is to hide the women and children, figuratively speaking. Because since TJ Watt in 2017, since TJ, that was a 30th overall pick, which was beyond brilliant. I don't care what anybody says about, how he fell to them or they got lucky. No. You take that player when he hadn't even been at that position for a very long period of time, and you come up with the best defensive player of that span since then. That's a tremendous pick. All right, that's 2017. 2018, top pick, Terrell Edmunds, followed by James Washington. 2019, top pick, Devin Bush, trading way up to get him. 10th overall. 2020, top pick, not first rounder, but top pick, meaning the first guy they took was Chase Claypool. They, of course, didn't have a first rounder that year. They traded that to Miami for Minkah Fitzpatrick. But Claypool is your first guy. 2021, top pick, Najee Harris, gone. Nothing to show for him other than whatever it was that he left behind. 2022, top pick, Kenny Pickett, gone. Nothing to show for him, including what he left behind. Sorry. 2023, Broderick Jones. We have no idea. We do know that they traded up to get him as well, as they did with Bush. Right now, the Steelers' iffiest player on the entire roster, I think, at least as far as starters go. In 2024, Troy Fautanu, you got one half of football out of him in Denver. Here's what I'm saying. We all tend to get really convoluted and complex when we're talking about what the Steelers should do in this draft. Should they take a quarterback? Should they take an interior defensive lineman? Should they take? Here's what they should take. And I'm going to insist on this, even if I end up really loving the pick and it's clear that the pick was forced out of positional need. Take the best player. When this thing was working for this franchise, they were taking the best player. That began with the selection of the one and the only Mean Joe Green, and it continued all through the 70s. And by the way, it continued through the 80s, and it continued through the 90s, and it continued through the early 2000s. Where they've gotten away from this to the extreme that they will actually just pretty much blurt out what their need is, what they're looking at. And specifically in the case of Najee, they let the whole planet know they were going to take a running back. It was either going to be Najee or it was going to be Travis Etienne. And the whole world knew. The whole world knew, which is fine if you're going to do that, but get the right guy. Get the right guy. This is the most boring possible assessment. I understand that anyone can give in advance of a draft. But it's the right thing to do. The Steelers need to, I don't want to say they need to start getting back to who they are or hokey stuff like that. But they need to start doing things that don't have really much at all to do with the next game that they're playing. It's kind of the subject that I've been drilling as it relates to the quarterback mess. And it is a mess. You're sitting around, you're holding your breath, waiting for a 42-year-old to decide whether or not he wants to come play for you. Go get this go get this draft pick, this first pick at 21 or wherever it is, you move up, move down, whatever it is. Get the best player who's available there. Do this. Your turn comes. The Steelers are on the clock. Tick, 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 tick. Walk over to your draft board. See which names you've scratched off. And possibly with the exception of outside linebacker, and even then, don't rule that out. Just take the first name. Take the name that's at the top of the list that hasn't been X'd out. That's all. This doesn't have to be all that hard. When we come back, I'm going to be joined by Chris Halleck.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
What's happening, Chris Halleck?
What's going on? How you doing?
I get a little edgy on this particular subject. I do, because I feel like, it doesn't get enough recognition. The stuff that we tend to talk about, especially in season, is execution, coaching decisions, more coaching decisions, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But even over the course of the 2024 schedule, when the only real personnel complaints that were being lodged by pretty much anyone was, when's Omar going to go get his wide receiver? When's Omar going to go do that? What gets left out of it is that you are operating. How many years did I just cite here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 years. 7 years of no impact top picks who are still having any kind of effect on the current roster. Do you know what I'm saying? That's why I was stressing when I would mention Kenny or Najee. I mean, they were here.
Yeah.
They played. Terrell was here. He played. But what do you have to show for that now? What do you have to show for that as an organization right now?
Well, I think the Steelers are in an interesting situation when it comes to how to evaluate the draft and its impact on the organization, because Omar Khan and Andy Weidel are about to enter their third draft together. And I think most people would just go ahead and assess that Kevin Colbert lost his touch down the stretch.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that, respectfully.
Right, because Kevin Colbert, people want to dog on him for his final few years, but the Steelers also don't win 2 Super Bowls in the 2000s without him doing what he did.
Absolutely.
Like I said, 2000 to 2012, they did not miss in the first round. Did not miss. They hit on a lot of draft picks during that time, which is one of the reasons why they sustained success for the amount of times they did, the number of times they went to the AFC Championship, the 3 Super Bowl appearances, 2 wins. I don't want to. I feel like it's like I don't want to judge, 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, or even 22 on this group right now, because the only somebody said the only constant here is Tomlin. Well, we've already seen philosophical changes in the way the team is drafting since Omar and Andy took over. The trenches are a major priority, and they have been. I mean, what was it last year? They took 1, 2, 3, 4 of their draft picks were in the trenches. 3 offensive linemen, 1 defensive lineman. The year before that, they took 1, 2, 3, and and remember, both drafts, they took a tackle in the first round. So the trenches are obviously a priority. And that, to me, speaks volumes, because that was not what the Steelers were doing under Colbert's last few years. They were absolutely drafting for need. And you don't do that. You don't draft for need. You don't go up to the 10th overall pick to take Devin Bush because you're desperate to replace Ryan Shazier.
Or worse.
Yeah.
Take him because he's one of the two Devons. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
As if you could see with a clear view that Devin Bush and Devin White somehow had something in common besides a first name and a position.
Right. So I listen, in the moment, both last year's draft and the year before, the draft selections, the draft classes have gotten rave reviews from a lot of people.
They have.
And so now
doesn't matter.
Right.
Reviews on draft day don't matter,
right.
Including from us, by the way.
Correct. Now, how does it pan out? No, we can sit here. We can try to break this down. I am of the position that it's too early to really give a grade on either draft class yet because, well, number one, I mean, last year's draft class, they're just about to, they just finished their rookie years. You can't judge a player based off of what they did as a rookie unless and then even the draft class before that, I still like Broderick Jones, for example. I still am not writing him off. I'm just not.
Yeah. We still go right back to talking about positions and about positional need. Mm-hmm. And I'm with what you said, Chris. There's an exercise that could be done here if anybody's got all kinds of time on their hands and the inclination to do so. If you revisited, and I understand redrafts are the easiest, laziest thing anybody can do, and we can finger wag in hindsight. And Brock Purdy doesn't last, till the figurative day 4. Okay. Yeah. And you get players. Okay. That part's easy. But what I would love to do, and we can't, is to know in each of these cases, every single one of these years, who the Steelers had on their own board as BPA, best player available. Because and I know it wasn't Kenny Pickett in 2022.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about what somebody else got, some other windfall that happened to some other team below them or a second rounder, third rounder, whatever it was. I'm talking more along the lines of, as long as with that class, Creed Humphrey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's one that everybody brings up because the table was being pounded all across Steelers Nation for Humphrey. This was not some out of nowhere hindsight is 2020 kind of thing. Everybody wanted Humphrey. Everybody that I heard from wanted Humphrey. Why didn't they get him? They were looking for something that was related to need. They were looking in each one of these cases as I go, except for TE, which is just not I love the kid, but not a good pick. Okay, there's just nothing about that pick that was good. Okay, the low ceiling and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But Bush, clearly a need play. Claypool, clearly a need play. Najee, flagrantly a need play. Kenny, one of the most obvious need plays, maybe the most obvious need plays in franchise history. Because if not Kenny, then what? Malik Willis, would they have done that? I don't know. Can't rule it out. Broderick, need. Fautanu, need. At some point or other, if you were to go through their own list of BPAs, can you imagine where this franchise would be right now?
Well,
totally independent of positions. Totally independent.
I do think that, I am of the school of thought that best player available and need can coalesce. They can go hand in hand. And for example, last year, tackle was a very, very strong position.
Sure.
And if they didn't take a tackle, it's the same thing that I think is going to happen in this draft. If they don't take a defensive tackle in this draft, it's got to be because somebody fell that they did not expect to fall. Because it is just that good of a position. The only position in this draft that might be better than defensive tackle is edge rusher. And they don't need an edge rusher. So,
what's your safety's name, Chris?
Nick Emanwari.
Okay, he's the one that you've described him as being supremely athletic and all that. He's not somebody that I've done my work on yet. I'm getting around to him.
Yeah.
This guy comes at a position that is not even remotely a need for the Steelers. Doesn't mean you wouldn't, you disrespect or anything like that. It just means you have Minkah Fitzpatrick. You had Deshaun Elliott coming off just incredible season.
Yeah.
When you look at some of his inner statistics.
Yeah, heck of a find.
Okay, great. Let's say this kid falls to you, the safety. You're going to have probably 99% of everybody going, safety? What are you getting a safety for? Because you're getting the best player.
Well,
you're getting the best player.
Is he the best player though? Like, so I'm gonna.
If he is,
right.
That's my point. If he's BPA, you take him.
If he's best player available, yeah, and like I would. One name that I would put up there, for example, if you've got some of the defensive tackles available, if you've got Kenneth Grant available or Derek Harmon available, some of these guys that are Walter Nolan, some of these defensive tackles that are being talked about, and Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas, is still there. Who's the actual best player available?
Right.
Now, I initially am of the mentality that the Steelers would just go one of the defensive tackles because they love they want to address the trenches, and it's a really, really strong position because all three players are really good players. But I also do remember what Omar said at the combine, and this is the first time he's really said something like this on the record, which makes you think that it's genuine, is that he said we need to add playmakers. Now, they did turn around and then just trade their second round pick to get DK Metcalf, and that's a big, gigantic move to go get a playmaker. But he said playmakers, plural.
Yeah.
So I'm not ruling out the idea that if there's some sort of skill position player available and they truly believe that he is the best player, I'm not going to rule out the fact that we're just going to discard him and go ahead and take somebody in the trenches. I'm not discounting it.
James Fairfield says Tomlin acted giddy when they drafted Kenny. He didn't act. I'm parsing your word here, but he didn't act, James. That was real. Tomlin, in that video that the Steelers shot, that was in-house, basically running down the hall, getting to the phone and talking to Kenny. Now, there are more reasons than that than just, he didn't know what he was doing or whatever. He knew the kid. Kenny was in the same building. Mm-hmm. And he just saw Kenny do the thing that this head coach values more than anything else, which is to win in stadiums on the weekends. In Pitt's case, that was Saturday, and winning the ACC championship. So Tomlin had a closer view, had a more intimate view of that player. So I'm not going to get on him retroactively for reacting the way he did. In fact, I kind of like it, to be honest with you. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's not like Tomlin was alone. The whole city felt that way. So I don't, we all have different reactions to stuff, and we can revisit them and go, wow, what was I thinking or whatever. And that, Kenny might still be something, who knows? I don't want to get into that stuff here. Pittsburgh Toddy says, Tomlin is currently 12th in NFL history in coaching wins. He's 10 away from Chuck Noll, by the way, coached in shorter seasons. Mm-hmm. Only Andy Reid has more among active coaches, and Frank Rice thinks he's better. I think Frank's one of our people in our commenting community. So Toddy's going at Frank here on our show. We could do this every show, the Tomlin stuff. I do plenty of it myself. Daniel has a question here. Why was Minkah schemed 35 yards? I love how every time this comes up, it's another 5 yards. Right?
It's further and further away. Yeah.
35 yards off the ball last season. Was it actually effective? And do you think that we will see the same thing again this coming season? Chris, that sounds like a worthy thing to bring up for some sort of longer term study, because the Steelers weren't super susceptible to the big play. When they were, it was because a team would attack the side that Minkah was not on almost every time, and it would just be a burn. It would just be just a totally blown assignment by somebody on that side. Was it worth it? Is that worth it?
No, and I don't think that the best way to use an all-pro safety, ball hawking safety, is to have him line up as the deep third all the time, so far away from the line of scrimmage. I do think that the main reason why, and it did happen less often as the season progressed. Like in the second half of the season, it didn't happen nearly as often as it did in the first half of the season. But I think it has a lot to do with the lack of man coverage skill at the other outside corner position opposite Joey Porter Jr. and at slot corner. More particularly at slot corner, because they had Beanie Bishop, who was an undrafted free agent, who, obviously played pretty well for who he was and who he was coming out of college, but still had a lot of, he had some growing pains. Well, there's no two ways around that. Had some big plays, not denying that, but in talking down to down stuff, he had some blown coverages. He got beat quite a bit, in man coverage. And then, Dante Jackson, for as opportunistic as he was much better in zone coverage than he was in man coverage. And so you have to try to keep a lid on things. And one of the best guys you had in terms of keeping a lid on things was Minkah Fitzpatrick. And so he kind of had to be put into that role. Now, you might not have to do that.
Football, man.
Yeah.
Let him play football. Let him play the game that he played against Cincinnati a couple of years ago in the opener. One of the best defensive individual performances I'd ever seen in my life. You know why? He was right up close. He was in everybody's face constantly. He is a tremendous tackler, Chris. That part gets totally underappreciated about his game. And when you talk about defending in football, especially as it relates to this head coach, what's the one thing that he emphasizes above all else? What's the one thing that he emphasizes when the Steelers aren't playing well defensively? He'll just say, we didn't tackle, or we need to get back to tackling. It's still tackle football.
Yeah.
It's still tackle football. And Minkah does that so well. And you're basically paying him $18 million a year, and never mind even the hit on the cap. You value him allegedly that much that you're saying, hey, just sit back here, and if anybody screws up, try to help him out a little bit. Come on. That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why they got a guy like Darius Slay this offseason, because now you have two outside corners that can man cover. And you have,
Slay can really, man.
Yes, he can.
Still.
and then you brought in Brandon Echols. I'm not ruling out slot corner in the draft either. I'm really not.
That would be late.
It would, more like, probably early day 3. I like Jacob Parrish out of Kansas State. I think he's a good option for around that spot in the draft. But there are still, Mike Hilton's a free agent. If he's still a free agent after the draft,
man, take him in 2 seconds. Nate Hinsman says it's much easier to take the best player available when you don't have glaring needs. What are the glaring needs? What's missing right now in this football team? Glaring need. If you're of the school of thought that Mason Rudolph's not a starting quarterback, then you can say quarterback. Okay. But otherwise, glaring needs. Slot corner, sure. Beanie Bishop made some plays as a rookie. Okay. I'm not saying that they have that position sealed with Beanie, but I'm not saying that they don't. And I certainly wouldn't call it a glaring need. Wide receiver was one. Then they really, really, really addressed it. 150 million different ways. Okay. So what's the glaring need? The glaring need, replace Larry O, replace basically Keanu, move him into the old Larry O slot. Okay. Mm-hmm. Glaring need, I don't know. Draft the best player. Stop doing this other thing that has brought these other results, that has brought the Steelers back down to the level of the teams that they used to basically make fun of for not having that approach. You see what I'm saying? It's just not working. This isn't working. Step back from the immediate stuff, the immediate need, how they're going to win their opener, and look at these drafts. Look at these top draft picks and ask yourself, heck, it didn't even have to be, Chris, 7 or 8 of these guys. How about just half of them? If they were legitimate impact first round or second round, and by I say second round, I'm talking about ace second round picks like Zach Frazier, let's go big here, Stephon Tuitt, okay? Second round picks where you go, whoa, they got him in a second round? That's fantastic. Those haven't been there either, other than Frazier, obviously. I really like Frazier.
Yeah, no, Zach Frazier. I mean, really, I'm not saying this just to blow smoke, or anything like that. He was probably at his peak one of the top 5 centers in the league last year.
Sure,
at his
and
peak.
He's just getting started.
he's just, and that's including dealing with a midseason injury. So yeah, he's the very, very good draft pick right now. Obviously, we have to see what year 2 and the future has in store. I kind of want to give Omar and Andy a little bit more time. Because I want to see what they do, because I think it's a little early to
on their drafts. I'm talking about just body of work, and I'm including their body of work because of the intention that went into their picks. There's no doubt in my mind that whether or not those classes were loaded with offensive tackles, and they obviously were, they drafted by need. Larry O's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying but even this year's draft, like you look at their pre-draft visits, they've either met with or scheduled 7 running backs. They've met with or scheduled 6 defensive tackles, and they do align with needs. However, they also do align with very, very strong positions in this draft.
Good.
They're
good.
It's not like
your point's made. You've got a good point here. It's a fair point. I'm looking at 7 years here, and it's not good enough. Larry O's replacement. I guess these are the glaring needs. RB2, Deshaun Elliott's replacement after this year. How about just more Deshaun Elliott?
Yeah, I would re-sign him if you could.
Yeah. And a left guard replacement after this year. That's legit. But are you really replacing Isaac Seumalo with a late pick? And is that a need? They
kind of did it with Mason McCormick and James Daniels last year. I mean, they took Mason McCormick last year knowing that, okay, we have a year. James Daniels is going to play out the rest of his contract, and McCormick will have a year to learn behind him and to grow. Well, that plan got accelerated real fast the moment James Daniels' Achilles ruptured.
Kevin Lynch becomes the latest to come in and suggest that the Steelers are bad at run defense because they had a bad playoff game. Wait, no, they had 2 bad playoff games, the other one having been with a different group. They all change from year to year a lot. They change a lot. Mm-hmm. The Steelers finished the 2024 NFL season as the 6th best run defense in the league. That's really good. Okay. They're okay when they're not getting beat up and they're not stuck on the field for 75, 80 snaps.
Yeah.
Steelers Love says, I feel like the Steelers drafted the best center in the class last year. I mean, Zach's got a chance to show everybody exactly that.
And the great thing about that is that if you look at the centers in this year's class, there might not be a starting center in the entire class.
Is that right?
Yeah,
I hadn't heard that. That's interesting.
There could be. There's a couple of the interior line class gets a lot better if a lot of these tackles have to move inside. But it's not a good interior line class. It's actually probably, I think, the worst position. Like, talk about center / guard, it's probably the worst position in the entire class.
I like this one. Randy's going to get us closed up for the day. Randy says, what's the key to finding players who place winning as their number one priority? Now, that's really intangible and obviously really vague. But Chris, before I have something to say on this, I want to ask you, when you're out at these combines and these Senior Bowls and so forth, Mobile, Indianapolis, wherever, the pro days, what is it that you hear mostly as it relates to intangibles and team intangibles? Because we hear, and see some coaches look for the strangest things. Who runs to participate in the special teams drills, for example? You heard that. That was Peyton Wilson's story. Remember that?
Yeah.
They saw him running to do the special teams drill, and they're like, wow, that really means something. Does it? I don't know. What's the best way to answer Randy's question here?
I think Well, the key to finding the players is throughout this entire process, meeting with these players at the Senior Bowl, meeting with them at the Combine, going to the pro days, having dinner with them the night before the actual workouts, bringing them in for pre-draft visits. Stop calling them top 30 visits, by the way, people. They're not called top 30 visits. That is nails on a chalkboard to me.
What a strange term that came out of nowhere. It doesn't mean anything.
Does not mean anything. Do not call them. If you see somebody call them top 30 visits, correct them. It's not right. Anyway, but the one thing that I'll give a good example of one thing I heard at the Combine, and I obviously, I can't say who said it, but the meeting that they had with Jahdae Barron, the cornerback out of Texas, who probably won't be available when the Steelers pick, is just the level of football intelligence that came out of his mouth as he was talking. And I think each player has their own chance to make their own mark based off of what the conversation leads to, because you have other guys like Derek Harmon who said, I could just talk life with Mike Tomlin for hours. And then you have Jahdae Barron, who's just like, he sounds like he's a 10-year vet with the way he talks about football.
That's interesting.
And so there's just, every player has their different ways of making an impact. And so it's cool to go throughout the process and hear the different stories about the different players.
Well, the thing that came to my mind when Randy's question came up about, what do they value in terms of, or what do they look for in terms of winning? I'll go back to something Colbert used to say on a regular basis, especially as college football began to morph into players bowing out after their seasons ended. Mm-hmm. Colbert, and he would speak for Tomlin on this, and I could tell that because Tomlin would be sitting next to him at one of these pre-draft sessions going like this, nodding his head emphatically with his eyes way open. And that is that they really value seeing a player participate in their school's bowl game. Mm-hmm. I mentioned the other day Jackson Dart participating in the Gator Bowl. Well, not only did Dart go and show up for his team that he had obviously quarterbacked, but Dart went out there and threw for 400 some yards. So the idea of hiding yourself or wrapping yourself in bubble while waiting for the Combine, that's supposed to somehow be better for you. You're listening to your agents who are telling you the worst thing that can happen now. The worst thing that can happen is that you get hurt. You can't get hurt. Dart goes out there and just plays football. And Dart gets it done. And he gets it done for his team, and he gets it done for himself. And the NFL teams like the Steelers that respect that, oh, man, you go like this. Why do you think the Steelers really like Will Howard? Oh,
because
in the stadiums. Why do they like Ohio State in general, though, Chris, right?
Yeah. But
because they feel like Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia and LSU essentially replicate NFL pressure, NFL atmospheres, NFL expectations.
Mm-hmm. And I would say the one thing about Will Howard, because I've been hearing this throughout, is that his draft stock rose because of what he did in the playoffs. And
it should have.
Yes,
he grew up. He grew up. He's a different case than a lot of guys. He was a much better player in those games than he was for Ohio State in the regular season.
Yeah, because if he just ends his season with that Ohio State loss to Michigan,
even I know enough about college football to know that.
But I mean, if that's the way he ends his Ohio State career, his college career, he's not being talked about as even a possible day 2 option, which I don't think, but I mean, he's not being, I don't think the Steelers show the interest that they're showing in him right now. Now, I'm not saying they're showing interest in him like, oh, we're going to go get him in the first round or anything like that, but they are interested. They met with him at the Combine. They had dinner with him ahead of his pro day. They like him a lot. And I think what he did, and I know this for a fact, and I reported this in a Friday Insider on DK Pittsburgh Sports. I know Mike Tomlin was not high on him last year, like during the football season. During the football season.
That's interesting.
Like in October. I know he was not high on him, and that changed. And why do you think that changed? Because of what he did to help lead Ohio State to a national championship.
Yeah, when I say that's interesting, I mean that's something that should be of interest to everybody because that also underscores the progress that he made. And that's all the time we have for today, Chris. Look at that. We've ticked out.
Sounds good.
So tomorrow is Thursday. We'll do another one of these tomorrow, and tomorrow will be the exact, by the way, 2-week point out from the first round of the 2025 National Football League draft. Do it again then. Why do I struggle with these endings, people? Why do I do that? Who wants to do the endings for me? Whoa, look at the boss coming in with a giant how did you do that? The giant message on there? 1,812 memberships is the new number, and this is a new thing, this giant black commenting balloon. Let's take care of some business today before we check out. Kyle Mundy came in with a $2 Canadian contribution. We love Canada. I love Canada. Steelers trade away picks 4 through 7 to move up. That's where you trade from. But this is now going to be the third time I've invoked Kevin Colbert on this show because he's had a big, big influence on a lot of people in that organization in all his years. And Omar Khan happens to be one of those. They don't see those as just candy to pass around. They want to be sure about that. But Omar does sound like he wants to move back into the second round. So that would be the move up. If you're thinking of anything at all, Kyle, that would be the move up that would be in place. Terry came in with a $1 contribution. Our friend the barber came in with one as well. And Stella Fierce came in with a fierce, intense contribution of 20. Seriously, what should this ending be like when I go out with Chris? Like, I don't even know what to say. Like what?
Bye, Chris.
Huh?
Bye, Chris.
She says, say bye, Chris. He likes that one. I see him laughing down there in our figurative green room. Bye, Chris. Oh my God. Andy Hathorn, I want to welcome him as a new member to the show. The way that you can become a member, and you are going to want to do this within the next 2 weeks. You got to trust me on that because some of our stuff
on the screen
related to the draft is going to be for members only. So go to dkps.net/join. You can see it on our screen there. You can see it in our comments. All you have to do is type that URL into your address field, whether it's on your phone, on a browser, on your laptop, desktop, whatever it is. dkps.net/join. It's $1. No, it's not. It's 99 cents is what it is. James Fairfield comes in at the last second with a couple of bucks himself. Great show. And he thought it was so great that he stuck an extra T on great. I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody who watches this. And we're going to be back with another one tomorrow. Have a good night, everybody. Wrong with the endings.